Welcome to Proline TV here on this Thursday, March 20th. Kevin Rogers with you. And yes, the NCAA tournament does get going today, and that'll be a big focus among sports fans. But also, we have a loaded NHL slate tonight in case you want to switch things up from the basketball and try to find some good first period plays. That's what we're here for. So, we're going to go over every game in the NHL tonight, look over the best first period angles, also give you a couple best bets at the end. So without further ado, let's get this thing going here, and let's first begin with our sheet. And we're going to go to New Jersey, the Flames and the Devils. They will begin things tonight up in Newark, and the Flames off a good win over the Rangers back 2 nights ago. Calgary, though, has still struggled on the road in the first period, 11, 13, and 9 so far on the season, 16 and 17 on the over in the opening period. New Jersey, they have not been good in the first period this year at home, 5, 9, and 16. And the Devils, we'll look at them first here in this matchup against Calgary. And first for New Jersey, they're coming off a 2-1 win at Columbus. They've won 4 of 5, so the Devils playing a bit better. Also, you see how they've done in the first period as far as the under. And since February 23rd, this team has gone 9-2 to the under in the first period. For the past 5 games, they haven't allowed a goal in the first period. So the Devils doing a good job in that respect. Now for the Calgary Flames, who are back on the road again. They lost their opener to Toronto, but ended up beating the Rangers. So back-to-back overs for them. And now you kind of wonder if it goes backwards. And we see an under. The last time these teams met up, the Flames took down the Devils 3-0 back on November 1st in Calgary. It was a scoreless first period. Dan Vladar played in net for the Flames that night. Going to assume it's going to be Dustin Wolf this evening, considering Vladar played in the win over the Rangers. And as you see, Vladar doesn't really play consecutive games, so probably getting Dustin Wolf tonight in net for Calgary. And the Flames ended their 3-game slide by beating the Rangers. They played a bunch of road games since the Four Nations break. The next game we're going to look at, the Maple Leafs and the Rangers from Madison Square Garden. And first for the Maple Leafs, they're coming off of a 2-1 win last night over Colorado, and that wrapped up a 4-game homestand in which they didn't lead after the first period at all, but also they didn't trail. So it's been 6 straight games. The Maple Leafs have not trailed after the first period, and going to guess Anthony Stolar is going to start tonight on the second of the back-to-back. Stolar's played against the Rangers back on February 28th in New York, and that was a 3-2 win for the Maple Leafs. It was a 1-1 game in the first, or after the first, and then the Maple Leafs ended up winning. Now, this number I want to throw out to you here, because I have it on on the side. That see, that's the problem is I went so big with the Zoom. Toronto, where are you? There you are. 3-7-2 with no rest this year in the first period for the Maple Leafs. So they've had their issues on the second end of the back-to-back, and even since the Four Nations break, they were scoreless with San Jose after the first period, lost that game 3-2. They trailed Chicago 1-0 after the first period on February 23rd, ended up winning that game 5-2. And before that, they led Philadelphia 2-1, but still they've had a lot of times. She trailed Washington 2-1, where they've struggled in the first period and the second of a back-to-back. So that's something to keep an eye on with the Maple Leafs. Now, looking at the Rangers, they are coming off that loss to Calgary, actually back-to-back home losses to Edmonton and Calgary. And they went on a nice stretch here where they didn't trail after the first period since that 5-0 debacle against Buffalo back on February 22nd. But still, the Rangers will try to get on track as they're right in the wild card race inside of the Eastern Conference. The next game we'll look at, the Panthers continuing their road trip in Columbus tonight against the Blue Jackets. And first for the Panthers, they have done a good job in the first period of not allowing goals. And so far, that's 6 of the past 8 games. They haven't allowed a goal in the first period. Probably going to see Sergei Bobrovsky back in net tonight against his old team. Panthers looking to snap a 2-game slide. as they went scoreless with the Islanders in the first period, led that game 2-0, but then gave up 4 unanswered goals to lose. And look at that. They only had 1 shot on goal in the first period against New York back on Sunday night. Now, checking out the Columbus Blue Jackets, we had talked about them last week and how good they had been at home this season, or at least in the first period. But look at this run here. Since February 27th, they have not led after the first period in the last 9 games. That is an unbelievable stretch. And also 4 straight, they haven't scored a goal in the first period. And you see they've lost their last 3 at home and just haven't been really good. They've scored 1 goal total against the Golden Knights, Rangers, and Devils. So tough spot for the Blue Jackets. Also, they lost 3-0 at Florida back on March 6th. And when they played earlier this year in Columbus, it was a scoreless first period. So the Blue Jackets have had their issues scoring in the first period against the Panthers. The next game we will take a look at, the Canadiens and the Islanders up in New York on Long Island. And these teams have met twice already this year. The Canadiens lost at New York October 19th, 4-3 in the shootout. They trailed 2-1 after the first period. But then in the next matchup, December 3rd in Montreal, was a scoreless first period. The Canadiens end up winning that game in overtime 2-1. So we've seen a couple different results there in the first period. But Montreal has been very good in the first period since the Four Nations break. They've only trailed 1 time, and that was in a loss at Seattle. And they are off back-to-back home wins over the Panthers and the Senators. So Montreal playing well. We'll see if they can maybe have a shot still at that second wild card berth in the Eastern Conference. It looks like Ottawa will take the first one, and Montreal beat Ottawa for the 3rd time this season, which is amazing. But big game tonight for the Canadiens. Meanwhile, for the New York Islanders, they have not been good in the first period of late. 5 straight games, no goals in the first period for them. Also 0-3-2 in that stretch, 4-1 to the under, and probably see Ilya Sorokin again in net for New York. But very slow starts for this Islanders team, and we'll see if that one has another potential for an under tonight there in New York. The Canucks and the Blues in St. Louis, and we'll start with Vancouver. They are off of a pretty good win over Winnipeg at home back on Tuesday night, and they won 6-2. They scored 3 in the first. They've been pretty good in the first period since the Four Nations break, and they're taking on a St. Louis team that, going back, they did beat them on the road led 2-0 after the first, won that game 5-2 back on January 27th. But even dating back to the beginning of February, the Canucks have trailed after the first period only twice. So that's been a pretty good job there by Vancouver. Now, St. Louis, they've been good in the first period recently. They've won 3 straight overall. They've been good since the Four Nations break, and they're trying to play themselves into a wild card position in the Western Conference. They won't catch Colorado or Dallas for second or third. Obviously, Winnipeg is probably going to win that division. But St. Louis, though, playing better. You see that 5-0. They've outscored their opponents in the first period. The last 3 games, scoring 16 goals overall. And should be a good matchup tonight between those two teams, trying to get a wild card spot there in the Western Conference. The Lightning and the Stars in Dallas. And we'll begin with Tampa Bay. The Lightning, they bounced back a bit since their 3-game losing streak. They've won 2 straight, but also they haven't been that impressive in the first period. They got a late goal against the Flyers back on Monday to lead after the first period. That snapped a streak of 5 consecutive games where they didn't lead after the first period. But you see the over-under, it's kind of gone back and forth a bit. And the Lightning taking on a Dallas team. We're actually going to go to the big board here for this one, because Dallas at home this year, 13-6-13 in the first period. So 6 times in 35 games they've trailed after the first at home. And let's see, recently, Dallas has not been good in the first period. They went 5 straight games without leading before they led Anaheim 1-0. That was a game they played with double revenge. They had lost the Ducks twice this year, which was kind of odd. But they won that game in overtime back on Tuesday. So both teams that will be going to the playoffs and they've just had their struggles early on. And again, Dallas has been very good in the first period this year at home, but tough one there between Dallas and Tampa Bay. Anaheim is in Nashville tonight against the Predators, and the Ducks. Last time they played was, in fact, last Friday in Anaheim. That was a scoreless first period, and Anaheim has now gone 4 straight games without scoring a goal in the first period. They've dropped 4 of their past 5. The under has hit 3 of the past 4 games in the opening period. Now, for Nashville, it's been a complete disaster for them this season, but also when you look at the last 6 games, they have not led after the first. The last 5, they haven't scored a goal in the first period. And now they get Anaheim again, who they didn't score against back on Friday night. And they dug themselves a 2-0 hole against St. Louis on Tuesday, lost that game 4-1. They just can't score right now. They had that 4-game winning streak, but they've scored 1 goal in the past 3 games. So Nashville has had a lot of issues. They're a heavy favorite tonight at home against Anaheim. LA is in Chicago tonight to take on the Blackhawks, and the Kings are a heavy favorite. No surprise there. We'll start with the Kings, and look how good they've been in the first period. In the past 6 games, they're 5-0-1. They have not allowed a goal in the first period in the past 6 games. Now, they did lose in Chicago 17 days ago, 5-1. So I'm sure they will be looking for a bit of a better effort here tonight. And actually 4 straight unders in the first period too for LA. Now, as far as Chicago goes, they went through 9 consecutive games without leading after the first period before a good start against Seattle on Tuesday. They led 2-0. The Kraken got a goal late in the first to make it 2-1, and then Seattle rolled them, and the Kraken won 6-2. So it's now 5 straight losses for Chicago, 3 straight overs in the first period. And this Blackhawk team, who went through huge streaks of overs earlier in the year and then went on a lot of unders, and now they're back on the over train again. They've allowed, 17 goals in the or actually 19 goals in the past 4 games. They've allowed 3 goals or more now in 7 straight games. So, I mean, even if you don't take the over in the first period, maybe look at the over for the game, considering how bad they've been offensively or defensively. Offensively, they're getting some goals, but defensively, they've been bad. But again, you wonder the Kings' motivation here after they were blown out by the Blackhawks back on March 3rd. The Sabres in Utah tonight against the Hockey Club, and we'll go back to the big board here for Buffalo. They are 21-10 to the over in the first period on the road this season. Now, looking at Utah, they are 14-19 of the over in the first period at home. So a little bit of conflicting trends there. Also, Utah 13-9-11 at home. They have been one of the top teams that tie after the first period. It's Utah and LA. LA still at, let's see if they're at 30 still. Yeah. LA and Utah each with 30 ties this year after the first period. So maybe a look always there at Utah. For some reason, they always finish with ties in the opening period. Let's begin with the Buffalo Sabres here. And Buffalo, they have managed to come back in the past 2 games after trailing after the first against Vegas and against Boston. Won both games past regulation, but still they've gone 3 straight where they have not led after the first period. And earlier this year, Buffalo led Utah 1-0 after the first, December 7th, ended up getting blown out of that game 5-2. Now, going to the Hockey Club, Utah trailed Edmonton 3-0 out of the chute Tuesday night, blown out 7-1, and they've actually gone on a nice alternating streak for totals in the first period. And that is now 10 straight where they've gone under over. So you wonder if the under is the play just because of that. And back-to-back games now, Utah has not scored in the first period. Also, this note, Utah has actually been pretty good to the under in the first period. They are 9-2 to the under, last 11 at home in the first period. So maybe take a look at that for Buffalo and Utah tonight. A couple games to go, and then we'll get to our best bets. The Jets and the Oilers in Edmonton. and pretty big game to say the least for both these teams. I mean, Winnipeg is still in control of the Central. Edmonton is trying to get control of the Pacific. Start with the Winnipeg Jets, and they have had some bad first periods recently as they trailed Seattle 2-1, came back and won that game on Sunday, but they trailed Vancouver 3-1 after the first on Tuesday, ended up losing 6-2. That ended a 3-game winning streak, but this is now 4 consecutive games that the Jets have gone over the first period total. And the last time these teams played, they actually played on opening night, but also, well, actually, that was the last time they played, was on opening night. Winnipeg won at Edmonton 2-0, or they led 2-0 after the first, won 6-0. Connor Hellebuck had a shutout. So these teams who could be seeing each other in the playoffs potentially somewhere down the line, their first meeting since October. And looking at the Edmonton Oilers, who are just trying to get on track. They had that rough start after the break, but they've won 3 in a row. They haven't allowed a first period goal in 4 straight games. They went through 4 straight unders in the first period before hitting the over, because they scored 3 goals on their own back on Tuesday, but they've done a better job in the first period. They had some slow starts earlier on, but the Oilers, though, playing much better. Should be a big game tonight between those two in the Western Conference. The Bruins out in Vegas tonight to take on the Golden Knights, and Boston, they are off 3 straight losses. They scored 2 in the first against Buffalo on Monday, then didn't score again, lost to the Sabres in overtime. That's now 3 consecutive defeats for the Bruins, 3 straight overs in the first period for them. And also they played right before the break, and Boston led Vegas 2-1 after the first, lost that game 4-3. Now, checking out what the Golden Knights have done of late, Vegas, they're back home after this long road trip in which they lost 3 of 4, lost twice past regulation, were shut out in Detroit on Sunday, but they have not allowed a first period goal in 3 straight and also in 6 of the past 8. So they've done a good job there in the first period. And again, when Vegas scores a goal in the first period, chances are they're going to win, because you look at the times they've lost, they've been shut out the last few against LA and against Pittsburgh on the road. And I'm sure Vegas will look to play better after they were shut out at Detroit back on Sunday. The Hurricanes and the Sharks in San Jose, and Carolina a heavy favorite in this one. Start with the Hurricanes. And Carolina, you see they've won 7 in a row. So they're playing very well, and now they're going out west. And the Hurricanes also playing better in the first period, in which they've gone 4-1-1 the past 6 games. Jumped out to a 2-0 lead at Philadelphia Saturday. They've had a few days off now, and Carolina playing much better in the first period. For the San Jose Sharks, they have not played since Saturday also. They got down to a 3-0 hold of Washington and never really recovered from that 5-1 defeat, but they are 4-1 to the over in the past 5 games. And these teams met a little earlier in the season, and the Sharks tied the Hurricanes actually at 1-1 back on December 10th, but then the Hurricanes ended up winning that game 3-2. So that's the look at those games. And now, as we bring myself back on, all right, it's time to do some best bets now. You went through all the trends, all of that. Now let's look at best bets for tonight. And our first best bet, we're going to go with the Colorado Avalanche. They are minus 110 at Ottawa. And let's get back to the big board here. The Avalanche, we're going to start with them and what they've done. Colorado, 12-9-12 on the road. It's not convincing, but better than the 8-16-11 at home. So Colorado better there. Ottawa has been up and down in the first period so far this year, but a couple numbers I want to throw as we go to the Avalanche page. Colorado off that loss to Toronto last night. I got a couple numbers for you. First of all, yes, they have not led after the first period in 5 straight, or excuse me, have not trailed after the first period in 5 straight. They also have not allowed a goal 4 times during this span. But a couple notes on Colorado. 5-0-3 their last 8 with no rest. Also, they are 5-1 in the first period in their last 6 off a loss. So they play well in the first off a loss. And since the Four Nations break, they lost at Nashville, led St. Louis 1-0, ended up losing that game, but led 1-0 after the first. And when they lost that St. Louis game, they led New Jersey 1-0 after the first. And for Ottawa, off of their loss to Montreal a few nights ago, that snapped a 6-game winning streak for the Senators. So you wonder how they'll come out tonight. And yeah, I just like Colorado in this one to at least take the first period at that short price. The total we'll have tonight is our best bet. Now, it's a bit of a contrarian play, I admit it, but Flyers and the Capitals under. Now, looking at the Capitals, first of all, this over streak is crazy. It's 14-3, their last 17 in the first period. And you see what they're laying here, 130, 140, 130 in a lot of these games. They tied Philadelphia at 1 in their last matchup in the first period back on February the 6th. They came back and won that game 4-3. Well, Philadelphia scored an early goal, and the Capitals got a late first period goal, and Washington ended up winning. But the Capitals off of another over, and this total is just low for the first period, which is so odd. But also, when you look at Philadelphia, look how bad they've been in the first period. They have not scored a goal in the first in 4 of the past 5 games. Yes, they've allowed a goal in the first period in 5 straight, but Philadelphia's offense since that those first 2 games against Edmonton and Pittsburgh out of the gate from the Four Nations, the offense hasn't done anything. And they had 2 goals against Calgary, and they got torched in that one by the Flames, but they really have done nothing in the first period since then. So we're going to go with the Capitals and the Flyers under in the first period as our second best bet. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel here at Proline TV. Plenty of great content. Also, check out all of the great NASCAR videos as well. NCAA tournament underway today. I know that's going to take center stage, but still, the NHL, you can find some stuff at night if you want to mix it up a little bit. If you have a bit of a tough day with the basketball, or if you have a great day and you want to just press a little bit more, you can do that with the NHL tonight. You can find me on X at Rogers Picks. Again, I am Kevin Rogers. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, best of luck with your bets.